First, I have an announcement I'd like to make. In January this year, the Parliament passed a law in which the possibility has been made so that citizens who have tax cases can go to the court, the normal court, the court of first instance and the court of appeal, and eventually the Supreme Court, to appeal any decisions on taxes that they might not be happy with. This is in connection with requirements on international norms and regulations so that the citizen is adequately protected. And and this was being done upon the request of the Chair Lady of Parliament to organize a session so that the public at large can be informed more fully on this law and how it will work. And the Ministry of Finance, together with the Department of Justice, have organized such a session. It's going to be held tomorrow at the university, in which a full explanation will be given on this law that has been passed. And the public is invited. It's free of charge. It's at 6:30 p.m. at the University of St. Martin. And any additional information that you might want in connection with this session tomorrow at the university, you can call 542-4292 and ask for Anissa Dijkhoffs, who is coordinating this session that we're organizing to inform the public on this law that has been adopted. I also would like to report that last week, as I had promised before, that immediately after passing the budget, I will attempt to get an appointment with the Minister of Finance of Curaçao, and I did so, and last week I went to Curaçao and sat down with the Minister of Finance specifically to talk about the funds that is owing to St. Martin, emanating from the division of the assets of the Netherlands Antilles. The meeting was quite pleasant. He invited me to lunch, and we talked about this issue as well as some other issues, and I thought the meeting was very productive. We will be meeting again somewhere around May 17th, that's next month, to continue our discussion. In the meantime, support staff from the Minister of Curaçao as well as support staff from the Ministry of Finance of St. Martin will be coordinating with each other to move this forward. Contact will also be taken up with the government of the Netherlands on behalf of the BES, all with an aim to try to finalize this in 2 months' time. So that, I was pleasantly surprised, went quite well. There are some requirements or some desires that the Ministry of Finance would like to see happen. We're discussing that. One of them is Seapost, which is a company that remains after the dismantling of the Netherlands Antilles. We have approximately 7.8% in that company. It's a company basically operating in Curaçao. The minister has expressed interest in acquiring the shares that St. Martin have in that company, which we're going to look at. And there's another company in which is non-active, but in which there are funds that has to be shared. I think it's approximately 4 million guilders. That too is being looked at and discussed to try to finalize all these things in the next 2 months. So that is on track and going quite well based on this first meeting that I've had with the Minister of Finance of Curaçao. I also would like to mention that I met with the interim director of the airport and discussed with him the issue that came into the news, namely that the airport is going to start charging import duties on goods through the cargo companies at the airport. And I urged him to please seek another format because it reeks like import duties, and the only authority that there is to charge citizens import duties is the Minister of Finance and the Ministry of Finance and the Tax Department of St. Martin. So it was a little unfortunate that that was coached into that format. So I asked his corporation and urged him to not proceed with that kind of thinking, but to look for a different way. I got to mention that it's sort of not dovetails, but clashes with discussions that we're having that relates to a leak in the circle in terms of what government should be collected in taxes. More and more we see that there are more direct purchases given the global trade that we have now. Before, everybody went to our businesses that we have here and purchased the needs. We're seeing a shift in where there is a substantial reduction in sales from local companies, local businesses we have here, because more and more is being imported directly from abroad. Of course, no 6% TOT taxes is paid on those imports. And in the meantime, business levels of local companies are on the decline. And that means also that less people will be employed, less expansion. So it's something that we need to look at and do something about. And perhaps we have to think about imposing the 6% TOT also on goods that are brought in, because the TOT law is there. And if it has such a disastrous effect on local companies, some of them even claim that they have a reduction of 30% in their turnover. It is alarming. So, given the fact that we're thinking in that direction, also led me to sit down with the airport and says, look, we can't be going in two different directions. We need to have one method, one approach, and to please use a different approach as far as rent that they want to charge and not related to the import of goods.
I have two topics I'd like to talk about today. Number one is about addressing our uninsured population. As Minister of Health, one of my responsibilities is to sign for emergency air evacuations for people that are uninsured. And during my short time here in office, I'm already signing for quite some patients that are being evacuated for emergency medical reasons, including car accident victims, heart attacks, things like that. And so it really has highlighted the cost that it has, the implication it has to government finances, because in those instances, it is the government that ends up paying those expenditures. And so as I'm looking into how our insurance system is working on the island, how SZV is working, I'm finding that there really is too large a population here that is uninsured. And eventually that's going to be covered by our national health insurance program. But in the meantime, I had this conversation with a couple of insurance companies, including Maksud from Nagico Insurances. And based on our conversation, he has come up with a proposal for insurance for uninsured people on the island. In particular, what we're trying to do is we're trying to address the people who have sole proprietorships who have, in our current system, they have difficulty getting insurance. So this would apply to taxi drivers, bus drivers, vendors. There's a lot of small contractors, for example, maintenance people who are doing plumbing, construction work. But it also would apply, for example, some people have caretakers in their house or domestic help, some of whom are uninsured. And so we've worked together with Nagico to develop a policy If you go to NAGICO, they would refer to it as SXM Medical. So if you go to NAGICO, refer to SXM Medical, they'll know which policy that you're referring to. And the idea was that this is a very affordable package. And the hope is that by aggregating the uninsured people into one policy, that they can realize substantial savings. I mean, they have a policy, for example, for a single person for less than $3 a day. So I think that that's something that's very affordable. And people need to understand that if you don't have health insurance and something happens to you, in the end, it may very often be your family, your friends, your loved ones who end up assuming the financial burden for the fact that you haven't managed to put a proper health insurance program in place. So this is a temporary solution. It's a private sector-driven solution. It is not national health insurance, but it is certainly a way of at least plugging the gap so that there's no need for people to be uninsured on the island. So there's very low barriers. In other words, in the past, there have been a couple of programs where you had to be members of an association, for example, a taxi association or something. This is available to everybody, anybody who does not have health insurance at the moment. In particular, the group that we're trying to assist are the taxi drivers, bus drivers, sole proprietors, and people who have their own businesses, small micro businesses. The other point that I wanted to discuss is we've been in discussions with the Inspectorate of VSA and with SZV about joint controls. In my numerous discussions with the Inspectorate, I always remind them we have very limited staff, we have very limited resources, and really the job of the Inspectorate is to improve compliance. And there's a number of different ways to improve compliance, of which inspecting and going to businesses and controlling and issuing fines is just one of the tools that we have to improve compliance. But there's also information campaigns and making sure that people understand what's expected of them. So we are planning this week to begin with experimenting a little bit in terms of how joint controls between the Ministry of VSA and SZV would work. I find that this is good because it's complementary, meaning they have different authorities, different tools available, and so instead of sending 2 labor inspectors out at the same time, we can now pair up and send 1 labor inspector with 1 SZV inspector. I also understand in some of my initial conversations with businesses and being here on the island for so long, that government bureaucracy also makes compliance a challenge. I mean, we do understand that speaking to businesses, for example, that sometimes they don't, it's hard for them to get their business licenses or their crib numbers. And so we do understand that, but compliance must become the norm. And part of this exercise is as well for us to look and see where the bottlenecks in our economy are. So although I'm Minister of VSA, I understand that all of our ministries are somewhat interconnected. And so, for example, if permitting for business licenses is an issue, then we will speak with the Minister of TIAT. If we understand that getting tax ID numbers is an issue, we'll work that out with the Minister of Finance. In the end, compliance with the law has to be the path of least resistance. And so far, from previous explanations as to what our intentions are in terms of increasing controls and compliance, the Labor Office has already reported an increase in requests for work permits, and SZV is already reporting an improvement in collections. So I want to make sure that people, the businesses in particular, understand when we come, we're going to be looking for things like, is your business license in place? If you have a crib number, every business is expected to have an employee registry. They're also expected to have a work schedule posted publicly. All employees are entitled to a pay slip, and so make sure that you are generating pay slips. I think also when we come, we'd like to get an idea of what your turnover is, which gives us an idea of what your economic level of activities are. And also there's certain safety requirements that are expected to be in place. But these are things that we'll communicate in future release. So my recommendation is to businesses you need to work on improving with your compliance. And the more proactive you are, the more that you come to government with compliance issues, I think the better it is for you. I think once the inspectors come out and find issues, I think our attitude would be slightly different than if you're proactive and come to government about requesting our assistance to improve your compliance.
Today, April 13th, I would like to give an update on the school busing service and the meetings that have been ongoing. Since the suspension of the bidding process, we have had meetings. On April 7, 2016, a joint meeting was held between the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports, headed by myself, as well as the Ministry of TIAT, headed by the Honorable Minister Ingrid Arundel, together with our support staff who have been over the past years working, sometimes jointly and sometimes separately, on a policy to regulate school busing. We have come together with the intention, once again, to work collaboratively to come up with a short-term and long-term solution concerning the school busing transportation service. Both of us, as ministers, gave the green light for a joint school bus committee. This committee had existed in the past, but sometime in 2014 had diverged. So they had gotten the green light to come back together as one unit because there is no way that we can regulate it from one side. So they are currently working on a solution to come up to a more efficient, safer, and cost-effective school busing transportation service for a number of years. The Joint Committee held its first meeting on April 12th, 2016, just yesterday. The committee is working diligently to come up with a short-term and long-term solution. From their report so far, not on paper, it has been quite a positive one, as was the initial meeting between the two ministries. They were given at the time 2 weeks to come back with the recommendations. The strife within this is to look for solutions which are fair and encompass the current operators and government in the short term, as well as solutions going forward in the long term, which government will make sure are beneficial to all parties involved. So as the 2 weeks is nearing, next week they will be meeting again, early in the week, where they will then complete the report and plan of action to the respective ministers, Minister Arundel and myself. Once this plan is approved by us and brought forward also to the Council of Ministers, the information session will be planned with the school bus operators, the current school bus operators. So we are doing our best as a government to work together, to collaborate, to make sure that all concerned are taken into consideration in moving forward. So let's continue to do this, working together to push St. Martin forward. Also, I am very pleased to announce that since returning to the ministry, that I charge a group of people to form the Education on the Move Committee. The Education on the Move Committee's goal is to do everything possible to enhance to the community at large, but also to all stakeholders, the importance of education and everybody's input in making sure that it is a positive experience for all concerned. So this committee is going to be launching the campaign on Friday upcoming, and I will therefore leave most of that information for Friday, where we'll be having a press conference on it. However, I'd like to state that on Friday morning, seeing that it is Global Education Day, we know that Carnival is starting, but we cannot forget that education is continuous and that our focus and priority, where our children are concerned, should always be first and foremost their development. So the first project that we're looking at is promoting literacy, and it is something that is totally inexpensive. It doesn't cost us a thing. And to show that the community is literal-minded, as literacy-minded, and find that it's important to stress literacy, we will be encouraging all persons within the community on Friday upcoming, the 15th of April, to drop everything and read at 9:20 a.m. Drop everything and read. So if reading is part of your job anyway, you don't have to drop everything. But if it is not part of your everyday work or play or whatever it is you're normally doing at 9:20 on Friday, I challenge all of you to drop everything and read. Now, some might say I mightn't have a book handy, but we all know, we all have our phones handy. You can read your email. You can read an inspirational text that you can find. You can even find it in advance and save it so that you can read it at that time. 10 minutes every Friday morning is our goal, to have all students, teachers, everyone in schools, everyone on the job, drop everything and read. That will be the first initiative in promoting literacy. And as the Education on the Move campaign gets going, you will be hearing of all the other initiatives of the committee, and I look forward to the community's collaboration with us in doing everything we can to promote education in every aspect of our lives, as education remains continuous and is something we strive to do from zero to the grave. So therefore, with that being said, Cedric, I'll be open at this point for any other questions pertaining to other points of interest to the
Our
public.
society is made up of morals and values. What do we mean by morals and values? Morals are also called principles. Morals are habits with respect to right or wrong conduct. Morality is ultimately a personal compass of right and wrong. Values are standards or ideals. Values are important and lasting beliefs shared by the members of a culture about what is good or bad and desirable or undesirable. Values have major influence on a person's behavior and attitude and serve as broad guidelines in all situations. One important result of morals and values is integrity. Without morals and values, there can be no integrity. The word integrity is much used in our society of late. That is understandable, because integrity is one of the main building blocks of a well-functioning democracy. Without integrity, corruption can take hold of a community. Corruption is defined by Transparency International as the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. The gain can be either financial or non-financial. In a worst-case scenario, extreme corruption could lead to poverty and could be the cause of hardship. An impoverished community can quickly turn chaotic and unstable. This scenario should make it clear that the fight against corruption is necessary. More importantly, every one of us, as citizens, must take responsibility for this fight. We should all be concerned about the spread of corruption, which can be compared to a virus capable of crippling government, discrediting public institutions and private corporations, as well as having a devastating impact on the human rights of populations.
Minister Lee, you mentioned the SXM Medical that NAGICO is proposing $3 per day. Can you tell us, and I'm going to give you all my questions for that particular insurance policy, so you'd be able to give me the answers. When will this kick off? When is it available as of now or already in place? Will this insurance be available for undocumented citizens on this island, people living on this island? Does it cover hospitalization and evacuation? And I remember clearly during the Brooks Towers process, persons that were trying to get their papers in order, they were required to have an insurance policy. A lot of people went to NAGICO and took out an insurance for a year just in order to comply with the requirements of IND, but after that, they never renewed. So where are we? Did you, during your meeting with Mr. Amjad, did you discuss that? Or is it going to be incorporated with SXM Medical?
Thank you. It's important to understand, regarding the premiums for the policy, they start as low as from less than $3 per day. But there's a whole range depending on your age, depending on if it's just yourself or with a spouse or with children. So there's different tariffs. So just to be clear, the starting less than $3 is for a particular age group. I forget exactly, the 30 to 45, something like that. So it's starting price, and then it goes up. But in general, I find that the prices are extremely reasonable and very affordable. In terms of when it's available, I would say from next week, but I think they could already start to go to NAGICO and begin the application process, because they do need to fill out applications, et cetera. In terms of whether it is available for undocumented, there are no requirements for them to be Dutch citizens so I believe that it is applicable for the undocumented here as well. And that's a problem here, because many of the air evacuations, for example, are for undocumented people. Yes, it does cover hospitalizations and evacuations. And regarding what you're referring to regarding the Brooks Tower, it didn't come up in our discussion. You know, our goal is to have more complete coverage with medical insurance for the entire population. So if there's a gap where people who are supposed to have insurance have now let that lapse, that's something that certainly the ministry is going to address on a structural basis.
Minister Lee, you spoke about compliance and you spoke about SZV and control. And I heard you saying this more than once, and I beg to differ. You said, for you, the price is reasonable. The cost for this insurance package is reasonable. I beg to differ, because we have people working for minimum wage. So, and we have companies that have people that are working for them and do not provide them with insurance coverage. You know of a personal issue that I had with Sonesta Great Bay. My kid was working for Sonesta Great Bay and was paying his dues, but did not get a medical card. So how do we get the businesses that have people working for minimum wage to comply to the rules and regulations of this company, of this country?
So once somebody is working full-time, they are entitled to SZV insurance. And one of the jobs of the inspectors are to ensure that everyone who's entitled to insurance, that the company, that the premiums are being paid, and that the employees receive what they're entitled to. So that is absolutely part of the reason for the improved compliance.